Well, welcome. Tonight, we're having a discussion on the liberal view. And obviously, since our last show, a little election has changed what we can talk about tonight. And it'll be interesting because I think all of you will support the change in the presidency. Just like most people now, we have a new president coming. And I'll be the first one to say, I didn't vote for him. He scared me. But he's my president now, just like when Obama came in. I didn't vote for him, but I became an Obama supporter the day he won the election, because the last thing in the world I want to do is hope that the person leading our country fails and hurts our country. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. Why don't we start with introductions? Chris, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. I'm Christine Crane from Milford, Mass. I'm chapter leader of Drinking Liberally on the Democratic Town Committee and on the State Committee, Democratic State Committee.
And I'll interrupt by saying congratulations. For the first time on the ballot, that was an impressive showing.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt pretty good about it.
I think we all agree. You took Milford, didn't you?
I don't think I took any town, but for someone who had 3 months of campaigning, not a lot of money, not a lot of organization, I took almost 40% of the vote for an unknown. So I think I have to feel good about that.
Yeah, before the show we were talking, I said if I was Senator Fatman, I'd be a little worried that first time out, limited activity, because the pandemic certainly didn't help you, that you took a lot of votes.
So
Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Barthel. I live in Mendon, part of the Mendon Democratic Town Committee. I'm also on the executive committee of 350 Massachusetts, which is a statewide network of climate activists across the state.
Rand?
So I am Rand Barthel, also from Mendon, and I am a member of the Mendon Democratic Town Committee and also a member of 350 Massachusetts.
And Glenn?
And I am Glenn Wyke. I'm from Milford, and I am also on the Milford Democratic Town Committee.
Who wants to start off with an overview of how you feel about the recent election?
Well, all right. I'm game to start. If I guess I feel a mixture of relief and long-term anxiety about the future, because I think that I'm very concerned about the prevalence of sort of loony conspiracy thinking in the country, and the level of polarization and the level of unwillingness of the side that lost to recognize reality and admit that they lost this election, and that there is it is possible to come back and try again another day. I have not before had the as complete a feeling that the people at the head of the other party actually don't believe in democracy at all, as I now have. And so I'm concerned about what happens when a more competent and more disciplined demagogue than Mr. Trump runs on the other ticket.
But now, do you feel a lot of difference from 4 years ago? Except disappointment 4 years ago, but
well, disappointment, because that was not just disappointment. It was a feeling that the nation had voted against values that are really, really important to me, and so I still have those feelings, because Mr. Trump's set for a record in number of votes he got, and it's only because we set a bigger record that we were able to win.
Now, Glenn, your overview?
I would agree with a lot of what Rand said. I think that one thing that this election demonstrated is that our institutions are relatively weak. That a guy like Trump can get elected and do the kind of damage that he can do, and nearly half the country will still vote for him. I'm relieved that the pro-COVID candidate lost. I can't tell you how happy I am about that, that maybe at some point we'll have somebody in the office who will care about making sure that people aren't dying needlessly from COVID-19, won't be saying ridiculous things about masks or other things, won't be holding big rallies, maskless rallies, trying to spread COVID as much as he can across the country. And so on that, I am very relieved. On the other hand, I will also agree with Rand that I think that there's, especially if we don't get the Senate, what the country has voted for is gridlock. And this country is in deep crisis, not just about COVID, but a lot of other areas. The economy is very shaky. And it's not just because of COVID, it's because we have an inflated stock market that is in the danger zone. And we have a lot of other economic crises. The lower end of the job spectrum is a disaster. A lot of small businesses have been closed. And I think it's something that has been going on for a long time that COVID has conveniently masked. But when COVID goes away at some point, maybe this coming year, people will realize that the economy just hasn't magically sprung back into shape, that there are underlying problems in this country that need to be fixed. And on the one hand, I know that Trump wasn't going to do any of that. And so I'm glad he's gone. And on the other hand, I'm a little concerned about Biden and his choices, especially in his cabinet, and his inner circle around economic policy. One thing that I'm very concerned about is he took on Larry Summers again. And this guy he's like the evergreen economic advisor for Democratic policymakers, and the guy is a cancer. I'm sorry. He is the spokesperson for Wall Street, and everybody knows it. And I just can't stand that this guy has the ear of Joe Biden, and whether he's doing this to mollify the business community, which is possible, or some people actually believe he has good economic advice to give. I guess I can accept it to some degree, but the guy has been wrong almost at every turn.
Well, let's hold off for the discussion on his appointments. So I want to go into that.
Okay.
Overall, your confidence in the electoral process of the United States.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
I think we have weathered something, but we've had a really hard lesson in just how important votes are, how important our social fabric is, how it's been unmasked that finally that voter suppression is the tactic of choice for the Republican Party. And you can't have a democracy if all you're going to do is suppress votes. That's not democracy.
But now, Carolyn, let me play devil's advocate here. Voter suppression. I believe both candidates broke records on how many votes they got. Personally, I know it's going to kill you to give Trump credit, but I think Trump, with his moaning and groaning and accusations, made this the most secure election we've ever had. I said it before the show. If I was the Attorney General running an election in my state, and I had the President of the United States accusing me of running a rigged election, boy, I know I'd go all out to make sure that every single vote, every T was crossed and every I was dotted.
Well, fortunately, with Georgia, we have an engineer who's the Secretary of State, and he believes in numbers, and they have validity for him, and he's not going to mess around with them. So I think we lucked out with Georgia, and and some other states too. But he's the one that comes to mind. But I think, yeah, we had a huge turnout, but there are people whose votes have been suppressed, and that's what Stacey, what happened in Georgia back in 2018 was Stacey Abrams was running for governor. It was just deplorable. It was just horrible, and people have just. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details about how Georgia has actually turned out, but I know that there have been hundreds of people in Georgia whose votes have been suppressed.
Now, let me throw something out to the group. When the Republicans have brought up issues in different states where they believe fraud was perpetrated, do you believe we should look at all of those after the election is done to make sure that there's no validity to them? And if there is, put steps in to fix it for the next election?
Well, Mr.
Have
Trump.
we done that already? I'm sorry, Rand.
Go ahead. Mr. Trump filed 60 lawsuits, and he went like 1 for 60.
Yeah,
he had ample opportunity to bring forward any real evidence of significant voter fraud. He had lots of opportunities to demonstrate that he had real evidence of that, and he didn't produce it. And you can be sure that if he had any evidence, he would have produced it.
Well, so, again, take the emotion out. Christine, you were going to say something, but when I think of significant, I don't believe there was significant voter fraud in the United States.
I mean,
the best solution we have is we have 50 independent elections. So if I want to hack and influence it, I got to hack 50 different systems. But I have nothing against doing an investigation to make sure that if there are any irregularities, like some states' mail lists not as good as they should be, that we fix them for the next election. What do you think, Chris?
Two things. First off, I want to say, at what point is enough checking enough? There's been, like Rand said, how many lawsuits? Pretty much all have been dismissed. At what point is it going to satisfy this group? I would say probably never until they win. So at some point we got to, call it we're done here, and your second point, I completely missed.
Chris, I agree with you. I mean, to me, it's not a matter of trying to go back and back. And I mean, I can tell you I am young, thin, and have hair many times. The camera still shows a fat old bald man. No matter how many times I claim I'm young, thin, and have hair, ain't going to work. But my point is, if there are issues, because obviously I don't believe the election is perfect. There could be some ballots mailed to dead people and whatever.
There are outliers.
Should we not investigate those? Not to overturn the election, because I think that horse is out of the barn. But for the next
Are we investigating these outliers? Are we looking for the outliers, these anomalies that do happen on occasion? And at what cost?
I guess I'm thinking the Japanese auto industry followed an American named Deming. And his premise was always improve. Get to 90% efficiency, then start to get to 99. When you're at 99, go to 99.9. Keep improving. Don't stop. That's what I'm looking at. Not to say, let's overturn the election or, hey, Mr. Attorney General, you screwed up. You only got 99% of it right. But once you got 99, shouldn't we look to always make better?
How do we know we're not doing that already? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of checks and balances. Let's face it, voter suppression's been around for a long time. I remember reading an article in Rolling Stone back in the mid-90s after Bush election talking about voter suppression in Ohio and how there were not enough voting machines in certain districts to prevent people from getting to the polls. So this has been an ongoing issue, not just a Trumpism issue.
It's still an issue. There are still districts where Black people largely have to wait 5-6 hours in line to vote. I mean, it's crazy. Everybody knows why that's the case.
But see, Glenn, you're hitting a point. If we're taking a part of our population They're Americans. They got every right to vote as much as I do, you do, regardless of where they live or what color their skin is. So if it turns out that some county in East Overshoe is making Americans wait 5 hours, that's the kind of stuff I want to see brought public, and not to make more Republican or more Democratic votes. God dang it, they have the right to vote.
Well, you can thank the Supreme Court for that not happening, because they overturned the part of the Voting Rights Act where we could do something about it. And they basically said racism doesn't exist anymore. So until that Voting Rights Act is fixed, you're going to continue to see these kind of tactics to deny people the right to vote.
Well, I would say that if there's going to be an investigation, the thing we have to be careful about is right now, the Trump forces are nourishing and sort of hanging on to a lost cause theory that their election was stolen from them. And this has the potential to function something like the way the stab in the back myth functioned in the Weimar Republic in Germany after World War I. The myth that the German army wasn't really defeated on the battlefield, but that it was betrayed by people, the usual suspects, Jews, intellectuals, communists, and so forth at home. And so, that is a poisonous myth that is out there right now and that is festering and that has the potential to really just like poison the climate of political discourse in the country. And so I think we have to be careful that an investigation not add needless fuel to that fire. And so at a minimum, I would want such an investigation to include issues of all the voter suppression tactics that are out there, whether it's making sure that predominantly black districts, people have to drive long distances to get to a place where they can register, or whether it's inadequate polling stations, or whether it's voter ID laws that carefully select what kind of ID qualifies in a way that is deliberately designed to disadvantage certain people.
But wouldn't you want to see that happen, Rand? I would like to see that happen right now, 4 years before we have another presidential election, because I can't imagine that any of us would condone or want to tolerate the fact that you're taking Americans and keeping them from voting. I mean, 5 hours?
Yeah. Oh, 11 hours.
11 hours.
In some cases in Georgia.
But I mean, when you're suppressing votes, this election came down to what, 50-50 minus a little bit? I think suppressing both?
Yeah, I think the election outcome could have been overturned by something like 70,000 votes if they had been ideally placed in the right states.
Right. So when I think about voter suppression, I mean, it just, number one, it absolutely infuriates me, because I may not agree with your opinion or your vote, but god dang, I've got to absolutely respect the fact that your vote is worth the same as mine. And anybody who puts little games in place, they ought to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
There's no way in heck that you can say, oh, we went from what's reasonable, an hour, 2? I would think that's even ridiculous. An hour to me.
There's no reason anyone should have to wait for more than an hour to vote.
Right.
Anywhere. Not in a country that has the resources that we have if we chose to use them.
And it's not like 500,000 people all of a sudden moved into Milford.
Right.
And we don't have the voting machines.
Right.
I would imagine that the population is pretty stable. And if it isn't, then it's up to, in my opinion, the Attorney General to build capacity that's greater. I don't know if the number's 10% over, 20%, but buy more voting machines.
Right. This would actually be the Secretary of State rather than the Attorney
Yeah.
General in general. They're
Oh,
the
okay.
people who run state elections.
Okay, so the Secretary of State, every
Right.
state has one.
They do.
Everyone is charged with running a fair election. How do they say that 11 hours is fair?
A lot of people
No.
deny that it happens. It's all fake news, and we can thank a lot of social media for that too, which perpetuates all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I agree with you, Al, that the engineer in me wants to make this better, and the concern I have is in the toxic political climate we have, how an investigation would feed into already baseless myths that are poisoning people's minds out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the solution to that is.
But not having an investigation would scare me more, Rand.
Maybe.
Saying, well, we know it took 11 hours for this county to vote, and obviously their votes aren't worth as much as our votes, so we're going to ignore it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'd like to see a dang report that says why.
Well,
I'd like to see.
You would have to have 50 reports from each of the secretaries of state.
God bless, why not?
Let's go get them.
To see the Federal Election Commission actually weigh in on this and maybe enforce the laws that should be on the books and have not been enforced in a very long time. But the Election Commission is entirely gridlocked, and investigations about legal bribes that happen during elections is totally off the table. So, it's a very unfortunate situation we've got right now, but that's what we've got.
Wait a minute, Glenn, what was that oxymoron that you just threw out? A legal bribe?
Yes.
Did I miss something there, like jumbo shrimp or Army intelligence?
Well, yeah. That the campaign donations always come with strings, and especially the ones that are dark money that you can funnel into super PACs without a donor's name on it. Those things, everybody knows pretty much who is fronting the money for those things, and definitely strings come along with those donations. So investigations on where this money is coming from and who is donating it. Sometimes we have foreign nationals who are donating this money too. We had several Russian billionaires funneling money through shell companies into campaigns as well. So it isn't just billionaires in our country who, I guess, have free speech and can exercise that free speech according to the Supreme Court by donating huge amounts of money to campaigns. But it's also foreign money that's flooding into our country through shell companies.
Now, I'll pick a scab. Are you talking about the Russian money given to Hunter Biden?
No, he was actually hired by a Ukrainian company.
Yeah, but I thought that was the I'm only going to pay you $60,000 to be on a board that you know nothing about per month.
Well,
But
that's never happened before here, right? From any company.
well, but I'm just wondering. I mean, shouldn't we look at everything?
When you say everything, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, if a Russian woman gives my daughter $3 million, then I'm in the same place Glenn is. I can pretend I know nothing about it and it won't affect me, but $3 million to my daughter, I mean, she'd be happy. I don't know that wouldn't affect how I think about things.
Yeah,
There is a well-established industry of people who are well-connected, basically kind of marketing their surnames, whether it's the lecture circuit or what Hunter Biden did, and it's in the gray area. It's not right now. It's not exactly illegal, but it is definitely unsavory.
Well, I mean, look at baby Trump, or even
for example,
the president. How many Trump hotels are there that he has nothing to do with except marketing his name?
Right.
You know, and I see the Hunter Biden thing is the same thing. He's doing the same thing Trump's doing.
Well, he's not doing it anymore. He did do it for a while.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I think there are Trump-owned properties where the Saudis are buying whole floors and
Yes.
using that as a way to pay him,
Right.
or people getting Mar-a-Lago,
Mhm.
memberships at double or triple the rates. So Trump is specifically flouting the emoluments clause in the Constitution. There's a big difference between a regular civilian like Hunter Biden, who has a connection to a very powerful father, and Trump himself, who is the actual president of the United States and has far-flung businesses and is far more vulnerable to things like bribery or coercion than somebody else.
Glenn, do you really see a difference between my daughter or my son or me? Feels the same. I mean, I think both sides are wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
one is much more dangerous than the other.
for sure. What Rand said is correct. That directly bribing the president is far more serious than bribing one of his children or his siblings, because there isn't a direct, even though it is rather unsavory, it isn't direct bribery. And Trump in many ways is what the founding fathers wrote the emoluments clause for. To specifically pull that off the table. If you remember, Jimmy Carter owned a peanut plantation, and he had to put it in escrow with an independent manager to run the peanut farm, so that there wasn't any appearance of impropriety. And that guy completely screwed up his farm, and the farm went bankrupt. And maybe Trump was afraid of that happening, but Trump instead put his kids in charge. And his kids have security clearances, are working directly at the White House. So who are we kidding here? This is a blatant infringement on the emoluments clause. And this is what I wanted Nancy Pelosi to impeach him on, not on this esoteric Russia or Ukrainian business. This, for people who take the Constitution seriously, this was a direct infringement of one of the core principles of the Constitution. So.
And he's had no accountability.
Excuse me?
Go ahead.
Trump has had no accountability. They have an emoluments clause, but to what end does that even exist? And what's the point if it's not going to be enforced?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It just, to me, I see both men, Biden and Trump, flouting that law.
But would that emoluments clause affect Biden's son? It's for the president's responsibility. He should be the one to set the example, too. If he's doing something like that, what does it say to other people and their ability to take stuff like that?
And to clarify the Burisma point, I know we've talked about this before, but what was going on with Burisma is that the prosecutor, the equivalent, I guess, of the district attorney or whatever, federal prosecutors were not looking into Burisma. Everybody in the international community hated this guy's guts and thought he was corrupt. And the Burisma hired Hunter Biden, I guess, in a way to try to influence Joe Biden. And instead, Joe Biden sided with the international community and got rid of the corrupt prosecutor. And that the new prosecutor went after Burisma. So I guess you could say that without the light being on Joe Biden, that maybe that wouldn't have happened. I'm not so sure that's the case. But certainly he gave every indication that he was not influenced by that, by the hiring of Hunter Biden. I don't know that you can make the same case with Donald Trump.
Well, either way, I'm not happy with either. Talk to me about the appointments. I'm reading in the Times. Yes, I read the Times as well as the Globe every day that Biden is picking more centralist people. Now, I hear second point that he's, as you said, he's picking people who have proven they don't know how to do that job, and he's bringing them back. But I know a lot of us, and I'm one of them, that was worried that Biden would cave to the far left and put in very, very uber liberal people into his cabinet.
Like who?
AOAC, LMNOP, Elizabeth Warren. I know that'll send Carolyn crazy, but there's a number of people that I get worried about.
What is your problem with Elizabeth Warren? I mean, she has proven that she understands the economy, that she knows banking regulations better than the banks do, and I think that she would have been an outstanding president. She actually understands how to work institutions, and she has a theory on how to govern. So I think,
She has many theories. I just wonder, can she get anybody to work with her?
She works across the aisle all the time.
Yeah.
Well, let's go there. Biden came back and said that he's hoping now that there'll be an epiphany now that, well, not now, but in 30 days when Trump leaves, and the two sides will come together and work for the betterment of the country. I'm scared to death that we've had 12 years of war. You know, for 8 years, McConnell did everything he could to stop Obama, Biden from doing anything. And then for 4 years, Pelosi's done the exact same thing to Trump. Why would it change for the next 4?
No, she did not do the exact same thing to Trump. She passed hundreds and hundreds of bills, and they sat in McConnell's lap for the whole 4 years, or the total of 4 years. So she upheld her end of the bargain. She passed a lot of really good bills, and they've sat there and they're dying there. So
if they were that good, why couldn't she get them through?
Because McConnell.
Do you think it's going to change now?
I don't think it's going to change. I think what Biden said about bringing everybody together is what he has to say right now. Mm-hmm. And I hope he is not so naive as to believe that the olive branch will be accepted, because I think there is every reason to believe that McConnell will continue doing exactly what he has been doing, which is basically having a rule that says that no Democrat should ever be allowed to pass any legislation. No Democrat should ever be allowed to nominate any judges to the federal bench. The only kind of legislation we should ever pass is tax cuts for corporations and the super rich. And I expect that is the tack he will take. So far, he's taken that tack in the past, and he has never actually suffered any real consequences for doing it. So
no, you got half the American people to vote for him.
What's that?
I mean, think about it, Randy. You got half the American people to support his party.
Yeah, in round numbers, yes. And that's exactly the point. And so I don't expect anything to happen. I think the war will continue. And I hate to say it, but I know that's disappointing to you. And it's disappointing to me. But from my perspective, there's nothing to do but man our side of the trenches and keep going.
And how come, I have a quick question too. How come we always look to saying, will Elizabeth Warren be able to get other people to work with her? It takes two. It shouldn't be all on one individual. We're talking about Nancy Pelosi not doing this, not doing that. But, the effort's made and that's not recognized. And yet, we're blaming Nancy Pelosi or Elizabeth Warren for not getting anything done. That's imbalance.
Chris, I blame Pelosi as much as I blame the Republican leader.
So Al, I'd like to
talk as much.
Can we talk a bit about the stimulus that just passed?
Sure.
So Democrats have been trying to pass some kind of aid to people since I want to say it was like May or June where they passed their bill. And it sat on McConnell's desk, and McConnell said nothing is going to pass unless they got one thing. Do you know what that one thing was? It was blanket immunity for corporations.
The immunity clause.
Yes. Oh, yes. Basically, corporations can no longer be sued, period, for maintaining a safe workplace in particular. But they had a whole bunch of other provisions where corporations would be entirely immune. And this is the hill that McConnell was dying on. He would not allow anything to pass unless that passed as well. And it was a damn disgrace. It would have set labor relations back about 100 years to do something like that. And there were some Democrats towards the end who started to peel off a little bit and say, okay, well, maybe we can open a window where for 3 months or 6 months, we can say just for COVID, if you had workers in your business and you knowingly had people there working and had COVID and it started to spread, that you would be immune from those cases. But thankfully, that was pulled eventually. And you know, I have to tell you that I am happy that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats did not cave on that and give broad immunity to corporations. That's crazy. The other thing that came up at the 7th hour was the senator from Pennsylvania, whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Toomey.
Wanted to slip in a clause to say that the Federal Reserve can no longer provide stimulus in any way, shape, or form to the economy. Think about that one. And that would go effect the minute that Biden takes over. An obvious attempt to sabotage the economy once Biden takes over. Thankfully, that was laughed out of the chamber. The third thing that they actually did pass was, you remember the old 3 martini lunches that you used to be able to write off? Well, thankfully, you've got a champion in the Republican Party. They got that passed for you. God bless the Republican Party. But when it comes to actually providing aid to families and workers who can't find work in these times, they don't give a damn. And if you voted Republican, that's what you voted for. And unfortunately, people don't know that. You know, I had to sit through CNN and MSNBC segments where certain announcers were very hard on Nancy Pelosi, saying, why don't you pass the stimulus? Mitch McConnell wants to pass this. Why don't you just pass it? And there's a very good reason why, because those liability things were on the table still. And those corporations that run those companies were more than happy to see those things pass, because they're more than happy to undermine workers' rights in this country. So I you know, we always talk about, you know, what media we can trust, and one is left and one is right. It's not really the case with companies like CNN and MSNBC. And so ultimately, you know, I thank the Democrats for not on those specific things, and this 3 martini lunch thing, fine. You know, let them have the triple dip 3 martini lunch kickback, whatever that gives their big donors. But at least we don't have to worry when you go into a workplace that you're going to get COVID and you can't sue your employer.
When I listen, and every morning I've got half an hour to drive to work, I listen to CNN for 15 minutes. I then flip over to Fox or vice versa for 15 minutes, figuring that somewhere in between the two of them is reality. I can't really believe that CNN is all good and Fox is all bad, because when I listen to both of them, it seems so tilted. You know, one to the right, one to the left.
Well, I think, to my point, if just to belabor my point a little bit, you didn't hear about those liability things on CNN or a lot of the other networks. The networks were entirely silent on those things. They didn't do a good job of informing people on that. Fox, of course, didn't say a damn thing, because they knew that would be highly unpopular, even with their audience that hates workers and hates unions. But the fact is that was the major sticking point. Nobody talked about it. And so the person who was getting beaten up for not accepting those terms was Nancy Pelosi, and not Mitch McConnell, who was asking for them.
And that amazes me, because
maybe we need to rethink, though, what we expect from our news channels. I mean, what is news? What's opinion? There was a great article in the Globe not yesterday, but last Sunday, about media and truth in news and opinion versus news, and talked about how in the old channels, when we had 3 or 4 channels, they had public airways, and they had to be licensed by the FCC. And if they said something wrong, they had to retract it. They had to give equal time to both sides all the time. And there had to be a differentiation between news and opinion. And with the onset of cable, now they don't have the licenses. There's no oversight. So how are people able sometimes to tease out what's opinion and what's news on any station?
Well, they are deliberately blended on all of these.
Well, but I mean, think about the presidential election. I was amazed when Trump ran the first time that the biggest issue that didn't come out and slap everybody in the face is you got a bunch of old justices.
Mhm.
Trump may last 4 years, maximum 8 years, but he's putting in people that are going to affect policy
Mhm.
for decades.
Yep.
And sure enough, what did he do? 3?
Right.
Yeah.
He did
That's
3.
just the Supreme Court, not
And then
Tons of
including
almost at the
emails.
top level. If I remember reading right, and again, it was New York Times, so they very rarely give Trump any credit for things. He got in more conservative judges,
Yeah.
and that's going to be 10s and 20 years
That's
will
right.
be, yeah.
affecting, unless I'm wrong.
And that's
Well,
because
he
McConnell
has
sat
two.
on
He has-
nominations and prevented them from going forward for all
Right.
those years with Obama. There were all these vacancies for Trump to fill. And the McConnell rule is only Republican presidents get to pick judges.
Is that fair? Is that democracy?
No,
I would also add one more thing, that a lot of these judges are highly ideological. A lot of them are not scholars in any way. They're political operatives. Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, I believe, were both part of the Brooks brothers riot outside of the Florida polling stations where people are trying to count ballots in the 2000 election. These people are hardcore Republican Party operatives. They're not jurists who have long histories of deciding cases and following the law. So this is highly unfortunate, but it's where we're at with the Republican Party in particular.
but again, you say the Republican Party, I see the same thing in the Democratic Party when they have a chance to
Do you
beat both of them.
think Democratic operatives to these court appointments, especially on the Supreme Court? I mean,
Merrick Garland?
Merrick Garland is the
He's
chief
moderate.
justice. He's a moderate.
To me,
He's
a
not a
Garland
political
or
operative.
Kennedy makes me feel better, and especially Kennedy. Nobody could figure out how he was going to vote.
Well, you
In my
notice
mind-
Roberts made a few decisions now that were more moderate leaning. I think once they get in and get their sea legs a little bit, they're appointed for life. So hopefully they make a fair and relevant judgment relative to the Constitution when it comes to deciding these cases, and not so have such tunnel vision. And that's
Here's
what
a question: should they be appointed for life?
No.
No.
Agreed.
No.
I like the idea they can't be fired by a president.
I like that idea too,
Not
but
forever.
right.
Yeah, I think that
in theory, if we were able to appoint judges that were not so working for solely one side or another, if we appointed judges the way they're supposed to be appointed, with that fair and balanced approach, they should be appointed for life, because then they have no fear of being voted out or anything, and they could make decisions honestly. And
Yeah, but if you said you could be a justice for a maximum of 20 years or till you're 75, doesn't that accomplish the same thing?
Well, what
not
and
necessarily.
that is a proposal that's been out there of actually staggering the appointments so that you would, let's say, appoint justices to 18-year terms, and you'd be replacing two of them every year,
Well,
or one of them every 2 years.
you get a
And that
president
way,
that would be able to appoint 1 or 2 maximum.
right, and yeah, but you spread out the appointments, and
Yeah.
you regularize the appointments so that each appointment isn't a battle of Armageddon, which is what we have
Glenn,
now.
you're usually good on these things.
Mhm.
When did we change the rules, and who changed the rules that said it's no longer a 60-40 vote you need to appoint a Supreme Court justice? We'll go 51-49.
That happened in the Obama administration, and it was done as a way around the McConnell blockade.
Right.
Harry Reid instituted that.
It was Harry Reid.
Yeah.
And I don't remember Harry being a staunch Republican.
No.
No.
Right, but it was a question of dealing with unprecedented obstruction by Mitch McConnell. And
To me, that was the worst thing we ever did.
well,
Because
but
if
the thing is that
Trump
Mitch
needed
McConnell
60 votes, he would have had to reach across the aisle.
well, he reached plenty across the aisle and he got nothing for it, and that's the problem. McConnell wasn't willing to reach across the aisle. I
It
forget.
takes two to tango.
Exactly.
Yeah, but wait a minute. If you won't work with me, what would have happened? They would have left 3 seats, 3 justices open? Eventually, you got to come to reality and say, I don't like Sally. Glenn doesn't like Sally, but she's the best we can find that we both don't like that much. You know
You're
what I mean?
talking logic and they don't talk logic. You're talking like, oh yeah, that should be a solution. Let's at some point be reasonable to move forward. But that they don't care about that. Like Glenn said earlier, they don't care about democracy. That's not on the table for them. It's all about control. It's about being able to put all their people in place so they can control and make the decisions on behalf of other people. They don't want to hear it from the bottom up. They want to lead from the top down. That's it.
And let's be clear that
It's all about power.
Merrick Garland, who Obama ultimately picks, was not his choice. It was Orrin Hatch from Utah, the Republican's choice, as far as who he thought would get past the Senate and had broad support. And I think actually, in reality, that guy did have a lot of support, but McConnell would not allow a vote on it at all. So,
But see, that would make me feel better, Glenn, is if I had to pick somebody that at least 60 out of 100 senators would say yay. Now,
again, it was McConnell. The guy did have broad support. If he came to the floor, my understanding is he would have passed. The thing, though, is that McConnell wanted to save that seat for the Republican, assuming he won. And so Trump got to fill that seat. It was really as simple as that. It had nothing to do with broad support. It had nothing to do with reaching across the aisle. It had nothing to do with some crazy pants guy that Obama had put up there. It's absolutely not true. The guy was eminently qualified. He was center right, further right than I would have liked, but okay, fine. He wasn't very good on certain positions that I would have had a problem with, but ultimately it was Obama's choice. And he chose a guy that Orrin Hatch himself, a senior Republican, said could get passed, and he still couldn't even get a vote on the floor of the Senate.
I guess my point is, if you know you had to get 60, whatever McConnell wants, he can't leave the Supreme Court 3 seats empty forever.
He did.
Why not? Why not?
You're
assuming that he cares about whether this is a well-governed country or not.
Yeah.
Why are you assuming that? Has anything in Ms. Connell's behavior convinced you that he actually cares about that?
Yeah, I've heard that McConnell remarked that having succeeded in holding the seat open for the time that he did, that if Clinton had won, he would have just continued and keep propagating excuses to not fill the seat. So that's who we have running the Senate right now, which is why it's critical that we win in Georgia. Otherwise, no legislation is going to get passed with the many parties we're.
Don't we have the same problem here in Boston with our speaker, too, DeLeo? A similar control thing? How is that democracy, too, when one person can control the will of the rest of them, not bringing a vote to the floor? That just seems crazy.
It's been that way since I moved to Massachusetts in the 70s, and we had Billy Bulger.
Oh, yeah.
It's been the House Speaker has been a dictator in that chamber. And
what controls them? I mean,
the ability to control chairmanships and the ability to control.
No, but Rand, what I'm saying is, there's 7 Republican senators?
Yeah.
That's
it's not about the Republicans
at all. Senators. It's not about senators. It's about the House.
Even the House, how many Republican House members do you have?
They're about 40,
Or
and that's not what it's
we're
about. It's a
talking about U.S. or we're talking about state?
No, state.
state, and it's all inside the Democratic Party. All of
That's
this.
right.
Okay.
For sure.
Good.
The point is that, again, it's not good democracy to have one person in our legislature, whether it's U.S. or state, to have that much control and to control who gets to, what bills come forward to get voted on, even though there may be a groundswell of support, both from the constituencies as well as the legislatures themselves.
And there I agree with you. You feel like sometimes you're looking at Putin in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have that feeling.
I don't
Yes.
like this.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't
It is
think
not
it's
democracy.
I don't like that system.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about, the Republicans do not care about democracy, period.
But
All they care about is power. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They just care about making the 1% of the 10% of the 1% the richer, and they don't care that we could have a revolution, or there could be a tremendous social upheaval with such income inequality. They don't care. They're just going to live in their guarded homes.
But we were just kind of saying that there's a certain amount of that in the Massachusetts Democratic Party also.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that those tendencies have found their way into found their way into the ruling party here in Massachusetts.
Portuguese saying absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely, right.
And it
Works like a charm, doesn't it?
And the thing about DeLeo is anybody who's the speaker right now of the House has the power to give out chairmanships. That you're talking about $30,000
a year.
Well,
but Carolyn, it's 30,000 of 60
on top of their.
But you're starting with a base of 60, 70,000. So it's not even 30,000 on a U.S. congressman's salary of 170. You're talking about a 50% bonus.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm saying 30,000 is a lot of money.
Yeah,
but
it is.
if you're making 60 as your base or 70, 30 is 50%.
Yes,
that's huge.
That's right.
It is.
And that's why DeLeo has the power he has.
And they give it to him because they want to have be in good graces with him.
And if you don't vote the way he wants you to vote, then you or if you speak out against him, you get an office in the basement.
Yes.
There's also an element of secrecy about a lot of the negotiations and ultimately the votes that happen on the floor, where we're a big technology state here in Massachusetts. We have a lot of engineers. Rand and I are both we're in the software industry, and yet our votes are posted in PDFs or things that are not searchable. So you have to really drill down and find out how your state representative or senator is voting. It's very clumsy.
And right now, one of the bills, all the rules will be decided during the month of January on how the House will operate for the whole next 2 years, and one of the bill there's a current rule that votes taken in committees is secret, period. So as a citizen, you never know how your legislator voted when he's on a committee unless he or she tells you.
Right. We've got a few minutes left. What do you think happens in less than 30 days? President Biden takes over. What effect on the economy is he going to have?
I don't think it's going to be that drastic. Trump has been threatening that the whole economy will collapse if Biden gets in. This will happen, that'll happen. It really hasn't. And so I'm not thinking anything drastic right away. I think the stock market likes stability and they like to be able to predict things. And I think Biden is a little bit more of a stable personality. I'm going to go out on a limb than Trump is.
The understatement of the week.
I don't see any big swing right away. I really don't.
No, my biggest worry personally is that we run back into the mediocre Obama-Biden days of 1 point something% growth every year. I mean, the first 4 years was Bush, bad Bush, bad Bush.
That was at the end of
Last
that
4
bubble
years.
that burst in 2008. You know, they were just climbing out of that. So,
Well, that's what I'm saying, Chris, I give them the first 4 years. That's a mulligan.
Mhm.
But the last 4 years, 1
It
point
didn't go
something.
back. It didn't go back. It kept growing. It just didn't grow as fast as you wanted it to.
Yeah.
And then Trump jumped in and it kept growing and he took credit for it all. So what,
I think that we need to measure the economy differently from the way
Yes.
we do.
I do.
We do not measure the economy in terms of how the people who are most at risk at the bottom are doing. We ignore them, and we measure things like the stock market and a measure of unemployment that doesn't measure people who have given up on even trying to find work.
And the economy is not
so,
the stock market.
We actually need a whole different way of measuring
But
the economy
isn't it,
that
Chris?
takes into account what?
Wait a minute. When you say the economy isn't the stock market,
No,
I don't have a retirement plan, so I got to count on my 401k.
That's your retirement plan. It's not the economy. We're talking about, no, it's
But
not
if my
the,
401k grows at 1.9% and inflation's at 2%, I'm not making anything on this.
that's you. We're talking about, let's go beyond ourselves. Let's talk macro. And the
Yeah.
stock market is not the rank and file economy. That it's not a good measure of how our economy is doing in general, because we need people that have money to spend, that can stimulate the economy, that can buy goods, and then stimulate the businesses that provide these goods. And the stock market really doesn't do it.
To be clear, the stock market is a reflection of corporate profits.
That's right.
It's not a reflection of how the average person is doing, and the vast majority of stocks are held by the top 10% of earners in the country.
But Glenn,
really,
where is the 401k?
The 401k,
the base employees. Where does that money go? The union pension funds. Don't they put them in the stock market?
Oh, they do, and I'll tell you one thing right now is that the Federal Reserve has been buying up troubled assets over the last several months, $7 trillion worth, as I understand it, to prop the stock market up. So I assume that's going to continue to make sure that the stock market does not crash. But do I think that the stock market is properly valued? Are companies investing in the future and building new products that people want? The answer is no. They're buying back their own stock and padding their own bottom lines for their own purposes, and that's it. And so the long-term prospects of the economy is more or less stagnation, continued stagnation until somebody does something about it. And legislatively, I don't see much happening. We need to break up these monopolies that are formed in every single market, and institute some competition and allow for people to move jobs again. And right now, that just is not going to happen unless Biden has somebody in Treasury or somewhere else that is much more or the Attorney General who is much more aggressive on.
Well, let's see. We're out of time tonight, but 3 months from now, let's hope that our president does well. Because whether you voted for him or not, just like when Obama came in, just like when Trump came in, he is our president. Biden is going to be the leader of our country in less than 30 days. So let's just pray that he does well, because if he doesn't, it's going to hurt all of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure.
And it's going to hurt the poor more than anyone else.
It always does. It always does. But as always, there's our cue.
Uh-oh, time to get up.
There's our cue. We're done for tonight. We'll talk to you all in 90 days and see what's happening then. And to our loyal viewers, may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Good night, all. Thanks.
Here's hoping.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home. Been Running all my life just for my soul.